Welcome everyone. Stay treat number 25. I can't believe I've done 25 of these. And they used to actually have Friday night and Saturday and Sunday. And so I shortened them up because Friday nights are just precious. But we are here and I added a component of special guest speakers to bring extra value to writers. It will always be free for people to come and hear just the speaker portion because it's important that we support each other. Carol Buckfire Benson, a seasoned speech language pathologist turned certified conscious business coach, a speaker coach, a creative storyteller, and let me tell you, she can tell some really great stories about a practice husband. I remember that when we were in speaking training together. And a published author. 5 Steps to Thrive reveal any crisis as opportunity. She's a trained screenwriter, and she has finished a literary fiction novel, My Friend Tom, that I've had the pleasure to read more than once, and each time those characters get under my skin, I'm going, would you just tell her already? And would you stop this and grow up to the other one? And the third one that is the main character, in my mind, it's like, oh, would you stop being so special? It's like, please, please, please. All right. So, anyway, Carol, please take us away into the Enneagram Edge for writers.
Thank you, Rusty. Um, so what I want to find out is who knows the Enneagram or who studied it at all? Did she jump off?
She's here.
Okay.
She studied it extensively.
Okay. So Rusty, Barbara, and Virginia. Okay.
And Dorothy.
Uh, there's a lot about the Enneagram. There's so much, and it can be overwhelming and confusing. And I remember when I first heard about it, when I heard what they thought I was, it made sense. It's like my whole entire life it just made sense. It was almost like a crystal clear understanding of the blueprint that I walked into in my whole life journey, my hero's journey, if you will. So we're going to dig into it a little bit, and I've given you these two handouts because um, they're references that you could use and play with and have fun. I don't want to be too much in our head. I want us to be more interactive and really take the material and see where we can go with it. So I want to begin with a quote that I just think it makes me smile every time I read it, and it's by Annie Lamott. And she says, I've always believed that these people inside of me, the characters, they know who they are and what they're about and what happens. But they need me to help get it down on paper because they don't write. And it's really true when you're writing fiction or a memoir, your characters have to come alive. You know what I'm talking about. It's like all there, they live in your head, and somehow you have to get it down in words so that your readers know who they are. So if you look at Shakespeare, every single play begins plot driven. But by the end, they're character driven. And he was masterful at weaving the plot and the character. Some stories, when you're writing queries to agents pitching your work, they want to know sometimes, is it character driven or plot driven? I believe that the most seamless stories that come alive for us are the ones that are both. The plot moves the character along so that they grow. It's all about growth. the conflicts. It's a hero's journey, if you will. So what I a little bit about this fiction novel that I've written. I wrote a screenplay that never went around LA. Another one of mine did, but this one stuck with me. And during the pandemic, I think there was 9 of them, agents and publishers who were really interested in my book on joy, another nonfiction book. And there came a moment where I asked myself, do I really want to write a nonfiction book again? Or do I want to get back to my roots as a creator, as a storyteller? Fiction. I love it. And I heard this big, mm-hmm, no more nonfiction, big no. So I took out this one screenplay called My Friend Tom that stuck with me over the years. I loved the characters. And I started digging into it and I reverse engineered it into a novel. So what I did, because I have been a student of the Enneagram for many years, I thought, okay, well, you know that typical character development chart that I have it in the chat for you. It's pretty standard. And I picked up this one from Scrivener, if any of you use Scrivener. It's great. It goes into the internal motivations, the physical descriptions, the likes, pretty typical stuff about characters. And I thought, what would flesh my characters out even more? So I started working with the Enneagram. And I'll tell you a little bit about how my characters weave together in a bit. But first, I want to tell you a story about the Enneagram because it also reflects your own growth. The Enneagram is developed there's 9 distinct types. I want to make sure I have them all here. Yes, there's 9 types. And on that chart that I have given you, and there's, I think, 3 pages, I've worked it into different areas so that you can understand how to create characters that have conflict where you can have growth, opportunities. Oh, we just have one handout now. So whenever you think it's probably best not to do the one on the whole Enneagram until maybe we're midway or at the end because you will just get sucked into it. There's a lot of information for you to use as a resource when you're developing your characters. So the Enneagram, as a brief overview, there are 9 personality types, and they are developed around, I want to make sure I'm getting this correctly. There's 9 types, and they're developed. 3 of the types are head types, thinkers. 3 of the types are heart types, feelers. And 3 of the types are more belly types, instinctual ones, which are they run their life by their gut. I have a gut feeling, right? And the way their core motivations that drive people in their life and what triggers them. It was this system was developed in the 20th century, and it's used very widely in personal growth, leadership, and team dynamics. Now, when I started studying it, I decided to try to figure out my family. Who is everyone? And it's almost like it's a subtext of the human being. We all have a subtext, this subtext that you might not understand everyone's motivations or the ways they process the world. But once you can figure it out, it's very helpful. It's also helpful to your own growth. Um, I am what's known as a seven type, which is a head type. Sevens are the enthusiasts of the Enneagram. Rusty, you are a six with a strong seven, right? Okay. If I recall, Virginia, I can't remember what you are.
She's a 9.
I was going to guess. She has to be a nine. Okay. A nine. Barbara, do you have any idea what type you resonate with?
Yes, I resonate with two, type two first,
Okay.
and then I think the reformer, and I also have 4/9 in me as well, but those first two.
Okay. Okay. So this may sound like another foreign language to those of you who are not familiar with it, but I was doing a deep dive, intensive Enneagram study class where we met once a week. And one day I show up and I say to the teacher, the guy who was facilitating it, I don't think I'm a seven. And he goes, why do you think that? I said, I think I'm a four. I'm a heart type. I'm so in my heart. And he grabs my wrist and he holds it really, really tight. And I kept trying to pull it away, and my head is going, what is this guy doing? He's like trapping me. And I said, what are you doing? And he laughed. He let go and he says, you are such a seven because you don't like to be trapped. And I just thought, oh, and he says, you think you're a heart type because you've developed your opening vulnerability, even though you always had it because I'm a head type. All right, I'm all the way up here. But I filled in my body with my growth to be more grounded in my belly, to start processing instinctual, what feels right, and the feeling part, being vulnerable and not being afraid of letting others know. So I became a more full body. Oh, a six with a seven wing. Yeah, I better check the chat here, see who's in the room. Um, okay. Okay. So, yes, definitely. It's really interesting. And I just caution all of you to look at it as information. Think of it as a blueprint. It doesn't mean it's your label. It doesn't mean that you're flawed. Like, this is how I always am. My husband is a six and he thought he was a seven. And when he found out he was a six, he was really upset. But he's got a strong seven wing. So that said, have fun figuring out who you are in this system. It will give you a lot of information. And when you look at your characters, that's where you can have fun. So, um, I thought we would look at like Harry Potter. Everyone familiar with Harry Potter? Yes, okay. Those characters are well known and loved. So let's look at Harry Potter. On the Enneagram, he is, believe it or not, he's a type six. And type six, he's a loyalist. His core desire is security and support. His core fear is being without support or guidance. And if you think about it, he's the kid who lost his parents, became an orphan, was in a closet of his relatives who didn't really show him a lot of love and support. And then he gets to go to Hogwarts and he meets his friends. And he is very fiercely loyal to his friends and the cause against Voldemort. but he also seeks mentors like Dumbledore or Sirius Black for guidance and struggles with that, especially when he's uncertain. Okay. Ron Weasley, he is also a type 6, which is quite interesting that they're good friends. But the difference is he has a very strong 7 wing. So he's a loyalist, the 6, and the 7 wing, the enthusiast. And his core desire is security, acceptance, and belonging. His fear, his core fear is being abandoned or left out. And his key traits, loyal, humorous, anxious, and at times envious or insecure. He's always the one with the jokes, and he always has been trying to fit into his large family. So he's the one that always gets in trouble doing really impulsive things. Hermione Granger, she's a type 1, the reformer, or also known as the perfectionist. Her core desire is to be right, good, and have integrity. Her core fear is being wrong or corrupt. Her key trait is principled, perfectionist, diligent, and sometimes rigid. If so, I don't want to get too much into this because it could be confusing for people. Let me just look at the chat. I want to see what everyone's saying here. Oh, good, you put everything in. Okay, thank you for doing that, Rusty.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious, who is writing fiction in this room?
Wanda is.
Okay, so just one fiction
Most
and everyone
likely.
else?
No, I write fiction
Yeah,
along with reality.
yeah, exactly. But Ambika is curious what type you think she is, Carol.
Okay, so if you look at, I mean, looking at the what Rusty put in there, which is, I had some.
I can share the screen with one of the resources
We
if you like.
could,
Yeah.
if you want to do that. The thing that makes stories most interesting, memoir, fiction, it doesn't matter, is flawed characters. Why do we like flawed characters? You know why? We put in the chat why you think flawed characters are just so memorable.
Because they're relatable, Marianne says.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
They're relatable. They're flawed. We, because none of us are perfect except in this room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We can see ourselves, Caroline says, because we're flawed. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yep, Diana's right too.
They're so relatable.
Hmm.
And some of the best characters are the ones like if you look at Harry Potter, let's say, Sirius Black. He's kind of villainous. I mean, we don't really like him, but eventually we do because of how he starts showing up. Now, how did that happen? It was brilliant in the development of his character. We were privileged to see some of the insights, the rawness, his own drama, his own wounds, the psychological wounds. We saw it all. He's loving and bold. Absolutely. Hi, Ambika. Flawed. And when you're writing a memoir, it's a very similar thing because if you just had a story of happy childhood, everything's great, picture perfect, that would not be interesting. The
No.
same thing for it wouldn't be interesting. The same thing for writing a scene. I learned when I was being trained in screenwriting that if you have a character who's at point A and you want to get them to point B, look at the scene, pressure check the scene to see what is going on, the arc of the character, the arc of change. What about the scene spurs the character on? If they're in the kitchen making coffee and sitting down and drinking it and staring out the window, that's a wasted scene. But let's just say they turn on the water on their sink and all of a sudden it's like bursting all over the floor and they run out of their apartment and they knock on their next door neighbor's door and it's a cute meet, potential romantic partner, then that's a reason for having it in the kitchen. So you always have to pressure check each scene that you're writing in fiction and even in your memoir. What is the purpose of each scene? And you can use the Enneagram to really flesh out some of the conflict deals. So, um,
Carol, I want you to talk a little bit more about pressure check a scene, especially in light of how in the Enneagram we are constantly turning aspects of our personality up that get us ahead in life, and we're turning things down that don't get us ahead in life. And so, pressure checking a scene in light of how we are all mostly, unless we're truly sociopath, psychopath, we are mostly wanting to become our best versions of ourselves. So talk about that in relation to
I,
pressure checking a scene.
so the way I look at pressure checking a scene is you look at a particular scene and what's the inciting incident? An inciting incident could be mini speed bumps along the way of the journey of the character, or they could be a big inciting incident. You don't have to wait until act two, if you will, if you do a three-act structure, or the middle part of your story. You don't have to have a big inciting incident there. You don't have to have it at the beginning. Of course, you're going to have the big ones because the character is on this journey. So if you look at Star Wars, the original one, it's such a great example of a hero's journey. Luke's his aunt and uncle, he loses them. He becomes an instant orphan, right? And that's a big inciting incident of his life. But then along the way, he's meeting all these people he has to judge. Are these friends? Are they allies? Are they enemies? Are they giving me the wrong information? Are they going to help me or kill me? All of these things, you're having that tension. Tension drives the character to grow. And it also drives the reader to want to keep turning the pages. So you have to look at what is the turning point of each scene? What's the action? Is it internal? Is it just what the character is processing? Or is it something external that's more passive? They weren't expecting it. Internal would be choices, decisions. How are they showing up? And let's see, what's a crisis? There's always little mini crises that we face. And it could be I'm making a recipe and I don't have the ingredient and I go to the store and they're out of it. As simple as that. That's a little mini crisis. So they have to come up with a solution, a resolution. They might even have a revelation like, oh, maybe I'm not making that tonight.
Let's open it up for
So I
questions, Carol. Let's open it up for questions.
absolutely.
Okay, so put your hands up or just unmute and come off and ask Carol your questions about what you might want to do with the character. Tell her about, a character that maybe isn't feeling full or alive for you in your memoir or fiction. Because we need to characterize our memoir people too. Like, I know my mother was a four. I know she was a romantic individualist, loved deep, good and intellectual conversations, loved information, and also really liked to have her own space and time. So, Ambika, go ahead.
Hi, Abigail.
Hi, Carol. So long since
Oh,
I've seen you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And with everybody. So I'm curious because I love this idea because, as some of you know or participated, I used astrological signatures to create characters. And I think these esoteric art forms are so wonderful to give you more substance to anything in your writing, you know? But my very first publisher used to say, every book you write is about you. And and I took that to heart because in my first book, which was a novel, Lilith is me, you know, but she also has characteristics of other people just to throw a wrench in it. So I'm wondering your feelings on if we're stuck writing a character, do you think it's a great idea to just, even if we're trying to model them on another Enneagram, if we're using this, do you think it's a good idea to start with one that is your own Enneagram?
what is the wisdom about writing? Every writing teacher says this. Write what you know. Well, the more you know yourself, the more you can flesh this out, and you can put a part of yourself into characters if it's appropriate or not. But I think what the Enneagram also does is it stretches us to go beyond that. So include yourself in it or traits of yourself. I don't know. Some of you may remember, Virginia, I'll answer, but My Friend Tom, which is the novel that I've been working on. My three characters are the protagonist is a four named Bruce.
Mhm.
Tom, his best friend, is a three. And Jill, the object of his desire and friend, is a one. So I was very strategic in how I have been massaging them, what sets them each off.
Mhm.
Now, I did not choose Enneagram types that are just super compatible. Not at all. Not at all. They trigger each other. They help each other grow. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question. And Rusty,
I can
do
add
you have
to
anything?
that. I
Yeah,
can
I want you
totally add to
to.
that because Bruce is the four. Fours go to one. Virginia can come off mic or whatever. Fours go to one when they're in stress or whatever. So anyway, four is the Bruce, and a part of his personality will go to one either in stress or security. Jill will actually go to four or seven as a one, and Tom as a seven. Doesn't have access. Well, no, sevens go to one, right? But he doesn't have access
Three.
to the four, but he does go to five, which is the wing of the five. So that's how he will go to join Bruce and his rock, but not much because sevens are about their own, fun and excitement and stuff. So anyway, they
I thought
really
you said
rub off.
Tom was a three.
Oh, did she say? Well, I think of him as a seven because
Oh,
he's not
three.
going to be penned down. I think of him as a seven. Did you say that Tom was a
No,
three? No, because he's got that networker aspect of going out off the, but really it's all about not being trapped either into one relationship too. But the three also,
Yeah,
he's running from his
I
feelings.
wrote him as a three. I
Yeah.
wrote Tom as a three because I really like the fact that he is charismatic, successful.
Yes.
He's, all of those things. And his friend Bruce, who's a four,
Yeah.
hmm
really feels insecure about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he goes into he
Yeah.
feels less about himself, and especially when it comes to women.
But if
So
you studied tri-types, like Virginia knows more about the tri-types, I'm betting that Tom is in his tri-type has
yep,
got the 7 and the 3 because in a tri-type you need to have one of the head, one of the heart, and
that's
one of
right.
the gut, right? And so he would definitely have that. So Virginia, go ahead. I will argue with
Hi,
Carol
Virginia.
about Tom later.
Yes,
Hey,
I just want to share that since I've known Enneagram for 30 some years or more, um, and I've been using it in my personal life, and I really love how you presented here about the writing and give us a really good overview of that, Carol. That's wonderful. I just want to say to everyone who's writing memoir, that we already all know Enneagram because you all know a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or you know all these characters from your life. Maybe you had a deficit of 1 or 2 characters in your immediate surroundings, but almost all of us have experienced Enneagram. We just don't know we know it.
yeah,
But if you're writing about a character and you flesh out that character in your book, you are writing about a specific Enneagram character without even knowing you're doing it.
that's right.
The value of knowing Enneagram is that you can really get into uh, writing more of what that person is about or that character in your book is about, because then you know they're like the things Carol has shared here in a writing aspect, you know, what their worst fear is, what their core this is, you know, those are really good. Like my mother, I never knew her character, and all of a sudden one time she got so mad at me and all this, and my God, my mother's a 4, you know, because she was never going to do her Enneagram. And
Right.
but it just makes such a difference to know, and I call it speaking into their listening. If you know a an Enneagram, where they are on the Enneagram, you can speak into their listening because you'll know twos are always over giving. So you can caution them or ask them questions about where are they doing that? How are they doing that? And if there's a 7, they're often avoiding pain.
Right.
So everything's wonderful about life. We just want to have fun. So we avoid the pain. I got a daughter who's a 7, by the way. And so what's their core motivation? And those are just important parts to really flesh things out. But don't worry, you already know Enneagram. You just want to know it better.
That is absolutely. And I want to add to that that when you are writing characters, whether it's fiction or memoir, when you're naturally going to align their fears and desires so that you have that natural conflict and growth. But when you're writing your memoir, you're really deepening your self-awareness about your own motivations and fears. I know that in my family, I had to figure out how to get like these. I have like these 2 sons. I don't get it. They're not like me. How do I communicate with them better so that I can have a relationship? So I know Value asked a question. Absolutely. The language. I learned how to communicate with my one son, who is a 1. And of course, as a 7, when I'm in stress, I go right to perfectionism. So I understood him. My other son is a 5. He is like, everything is compartmentalized. He's got knowledge. He's always right. So as a parent, I had to figure out, how do I talk to these weird guys? How do I not make them wrong because they're not me?
Valerie,
So
did you have
can I
another
just
question?
continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I do. In that, so when you're building your characters,
Yes.
and you aren't like if you're giving them language that doesn't fit with their personality, uh, it will confuse the reader. So I'm wondering if you really have to know your, maybe not so much in memoir or nonfiction, but in fiction, when you're creating these characters, that you really need to know their personalities to bring it out in their language, in their actions, how they react to certain things. Um, That's my question. Do you need to know it deeply?
Well, no, it's really you. If you think of a six is a skeptic. They're always asking questions. You can put that in their character.
Mm-hmm.
They will never just accept something at face value. It's very rare.
No.
They want to know.
Yep.
Oh, tell me more about this. So you could certainly do that. Whereas a seven is, I'm so excited about this. This is great. Let's just do it. It's more impulsive.
Mm-hmm. And eights are the true impulsive ones too. If there's something to be done, they want to do it right now. They can't wait.
Right.
Can't wait. Like my little great niece, who's an eight, when I was taking her camping, and she got to wear her slipper jammies in summer because we were going camping. She couldn't
Right.
settle down and wait for the time that we were leaving to go camping until she had her slipper jammies
That's right.
in the suitcase. She drove us all nuts. It had to be done right now, right now, right now. But
That's
Valerie,
right.
that's a great question about our memoir. And when we're writing about memoir, when we're writing about some characters that maybe we don't remember really well, or maybe they were closed off, or maybe they didn't share some of their inner secrets or fears, or when we want to make peace with some of the people that we're writing with our memoir, and we want to write from an accountable, non-victimhood, aware statement, allowing the other
Right.
person space and grace to be who they are. If we know their Enneagram personality, we can write knowing about their core fears. We can write knowing about what made them act a certain way from the point of view of the Enneagram. And I think the Enneagram is super valuable to us as memoirists because I can be more forgiving about who my son's father was, knowing now that he was an eight. And I was a six that went to my nine and all little peacemaker, but man, I was a passive aggressive wench because
Right.
I didn't know how to stand up to an eight. An eight is the
Yep.
challenger boss. And if I had stood up to him and gotten in his face and said, listen, I do have a different thought in my head, Buster, he would have respected that. But eights feel abandoned with all my niceness and going away and then being mad at him with my girlfriends, right? But
Right.
no, he felt totally abandoned. So now I can write about the absolute monster he was when I was the victim, but I can write with compassion about how I abandoned him. I left him alone. I left him to think that I didn't have a different thought in my head because I never let him know what was going on in here because I was too busy keeping the
Right.
peace and looking nice. And believe me, looking
Yep.
nice and being nice and staying nice is not nice.
Yeah,
They
I
don't
can add to
care.
that.
Yeah, go ahead,
My my
Virginia.
my daughter's an eight, and I told her about how eights think they're right if nobody stands up to them, you know. And she starts dialing her phone. We're driving. Keep this in mind. She's dialing. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm calling Alan. I'm telling him if he doesn't stand up to me, I always think I'm right." She was immediately going to tell him that he was doing it all wrong with her.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, Bill, you asked a really great question and you made a good point in the chat. When you use the Enneagram model, you want to just be aware of not to pigeonhole anyone or label them. And I said that earlier on, even when you identify what blueprint you most are affiliated with. Uh, it You always want to look at growth opportunities, conflict, growth, conflict, growth. Some people have conflict and they collapse or shrink or they avoid, and that's where they stay stuck. That's their blind spot. So, there's just in fleshing out these characters, you're really adding parts of yourself and almost everyone you know. Whether you know what type they are or not, it doesn't matter. But you naturally will add the parts of them that make them most intriguing and interesting because that's what you are. We're humans. We collect information, and I don't know, I'm really fascinated with subtext. And if you look at it, each person we engage with and interact with in our lives, there's so much subtext below the surface that we have to interpret. And sometimes we are off base about it, because they are not revealing parts of themselves. And when you are writing a character, when you're creating them, you want to hold it back. You want to reveal the different parts and flaws as if you are putting crumbs out.
All right.
So,
Well, if there are any other questions,
any
going
other
once,
questions?
going twice,
It's not
three
good to
times,
diagnose your friends. I agree.
four times. All right, I put Carol's contact information in the chat. I'll make sure that that's on the documents that I attach to the chat later if you weren't able to save them from the chat or don't grab them from the chat. I'm still adding some of the extra information that she sent and putting it on a chart that will print up a little bit nicer for you if you want. So I'll make sure that that goes out with the chat today as well. And I want to thank you, Carol, for coming and talking to us about creating characters with the Enneagram, which I think is going to be super valuable to Wanda. But like Virginia said, we all know people. When I describe a romantic individualist to somebody using my son or my mother, I always get, so I know that person. Or when I describe the adventurer, the epicure in life that will try anything once, twice to make sure to see if they, that they like it. We'll try anything once, but twice to make sure to make they like it. That was Marilyn Monroe. That was another famous character as well. There are so many ways that we can use this or not. Just ignore it because if, like I say, when I give you feedback for your writing, if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't work for you, then throw it out. But if it does, and you want to benefit more from it, then go ahead and explore it. There's lots of resources out there, and it can be really fun to go and explore the Enneagram types. So thank you, Carol.